So would you say that Mercedes Lollipop Man this weekend was a bit of a sucker?
Oh my god.
Oh, wow. That was a dad joke if I've ever heard one.
Perhaps a dum-dum?
Okay.
All right, we gotta stop. We gotta stop.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Grid Gals. This is episode 35, and it is our last race recap of the season. Ladies, I'm a little emotional right now.
I know, and what a weekend to go out. I feel like a lot happened. There's a lot of events leading up to the next season that kind of make it sentimental as well.
Yeah, I think Abu Dhabi is kind of interesting because on one hand, it's not interesting.
Right.
Both championships tied up before we get here. I mean, we had the race for second. We'll get into all that. I think it's a big deal just because it's the end, right? And what a contrast to last year's Abu Dhabi. Nail biter, drama filled. I feel like this race was a lot more, definitely not the right word, but peaceful.
Yeah.
Really? You think so? Because I still felt like there was so much energy going around the race for second.
I guess I'm really comparing it to last year's Abu Dhabi, so maybe that's not fair. But, the whole Hamilton Verstappen battle, going in, championships on the line, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're saying goodbye to some of our favorite drivers on the grid, whether they are retiring, like Vettel, sad, or just, not going to have their own seat next year.
Well, just did a big-ass eye roll over here.
Well, hey, at least he'll still be on the grid. There are some other people who are still kind of hanging out in limbo. We don't know what's going to happen with Mick Schumacher yet.
Very true. I don't know what this whole thing about the reserve driver versus third driver is. I was reading some things up about it, about how they've been very intentional about calling Danny Rick the third driver, but they're still keeping their reserve driver. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I actually think it means that Danny Rick isn't going to do any of the testing that the reserve driver for Red Bull actually does.
I also wonder if it's, and I mean, we can get into the drama right away here, I guess, kind of a way of keeping Checo on his heels.
I read the same thing in a couple articles.
Well, because they know that, Max and Danny have raced together on Red Bull before. That's a team dynamic they know. It's a team dynamic they're comfortable with. Granted, I think Danny has changed and matured a lot since the last time him and Max were teammates, where, he clearly wasn't comfortable being the second driver. I think now he's just grateful to still be a driver. And I don't mean that as a diss. I just mean, he fell into kind of a string of bad luck. And so I feel like it changes your perspective on things. But I do feel like Red Bull, if there's one team on the grid who's going to fire someone mid-season, I think it's Red Bull. I know Checo has that second seat. I know he has a contract. I don't think that means he's safe, at least for the whole season.
I completely agree. I've heard the exact same thing. And especially your point about them firing people mid-season. I mean, we've already seen that when Gasly was promoted to Red Bull and then demoted back to AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
I think they are kind of using it as hey, some shit has happened this year. Know your place type of deal. But I'm excited for Danny Rick. I think it's a cool position. I've never heard of a third driver before, and I think a lot of the focus is going to be using his brand too to do a lot of the marketing stuff, which obviously Max is not super great at. So
and neither is Checo. I mean, let's be honest, everyone loves Checo. I feel like Checo's kind of a fan favorite and easy to love. But outside of the sport, no one knows him. Well, I don't know. Maybe people in Mexico do. Granted, we're coming with a very American perspective. But Danny Rick, I feel like, is kind of the face of the sport. And, I mean, you watch Drive to Survive Season 1. It's him on Red Bull.
Right.
Everyone's excited to see that again.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to help Danny Rick because he was talking about he kind of lost his enthusiasm for the sport throughout the year, too. And so he's going back to something that feels comfortable for him, that he's been successful at. I mean, a lot of the people are still the same than when he was driving there a couple of years ago. So the atmosphere for him is really exciting, and he sounded like he was excited to be part of like a winning team again. Even just to be around it is a good feeling.
You know what this kind of reminds me of?
I don't know, I saw you smirking over there.
You know how we talked about like the long Instagram post as like the new notes apology app for like, you know, it was kind of like Danny was getting cheated on by McLaren, right? I feel like Red Bull was his long time. Like, this is like the high school girlfriend that you like thought you were gonna marry. You have this whole love story, and then you're like, we need to experience the world, see different people. Danny goes, sows his wild oats with Renault, sows them with McLaren, realizes the grass is not greener, and guess what? Returns to his hometown hero, his high school sweetheart, back with Red Bull.
Reminds me of the like greatest love story songs.
Yes.
You know the one I'm talking about? It's like, yeah. I think the one other thing I will say on Danny Rick, which was interesting and some people were commenting on, was he had talked and opened up a lot this year about his struggles with mental health. Mm-hmm. So I think that could also be part of maybe what he negotiated with Red Bull, of being like, hey, like, I want to make sure I'm good again. Like, can't just be the only one you're relying on. So
yeah. Because he said he wanted to take a step back,
right,
and kind of recharge and just be part of the atmosphere still. And I think this is going to be the perfect role for him. And hopefully, you know, if he gets his mojo back, I don't know if that's the right term for it, that he'll be in a different F1 seat. If it's not Red Bull, maybe even like a sister team.
Well, I feel like that kind of naturally leads to the question of Mick Schumacher, because there were the rumors that if Mercedes couldn't get Ricciardo as their reserve driver, they were going to look to Mick. I haven't seen anything or heard anything.
I haven't heard officially. I would kind of be shocked. I feel like I don't understand the hype around Mick, to be honest. Like, I don't think he's as great as some of the new drivers we're seeing come on the grid.
So I think one of the big criticisms I have heard around like the start of Mick's career is actually criticisms of Haas and Gunther, because basically they were like, look, Mick has a lot of talent, and he was in an environment where like he couldn't learn and he couldn't really grow because Haas wasn't functional enough, or like didn't have enough structure to help develop a driver that was that green. They were like, Haas is still such a green team that they need more experienced drivers. And they've even said that themselves, which is why they picked up Nico. And Haas clearly admitted, they're like, we don't have the budget to like teach a new driver, and if Mick is crashing, it's really expensive to keep him on the team, and we can't justify that. Where honestly, if you look at his results compared to Magnussen, he wasn't that far off.
Yeah.
You know, like, there were times he was out qualifying him. There were times he was placing above him in races. I mean, granted, neither of them were performing super well this season. I think they were, you know, limited by their machinery also. But I feel like it's one of those things where they still see so much potential in him, and they're trying to figure out how much of it is the team, the environment, and the car he was in versus, like, truly his own talent. So
Yeah.
I would love, like, whether it's Mercedes or some other team, I would love to even just see him as a reserve driver, just to see if he develops in a different environment.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. The way you describe that, it sounds like a reserve role would be like the perfect role for him. But I'm already like really excited for the new drivers too. I feel like we got to see a lot of them during practice come on the grid, and that was really exciting. We also got to see, and I know you texted me during it too, because there's a driver in Max's car, which like
happened to Max. I was so confused. I was like, what is going on?
And they were like, who was it that stood in? I forget who was even driving.
Yeah, I just knew it was a Max.
Young drivers is what they call them, although we've made that point before, they're not all that young, but was in Max's car and was like super nervous because it was like the winning car. You have to make sure you aren't crashing that too. And then also
oh my gosh,
during,
can you imagine like Max
the pressure
breathing down your neck?
over.
Like he probably had like a pep talk with him before. He's like, listen, if you bring this back to me, well, not pep talk, like if
He
you
probably like pushed him up against the wall.
yeah, no, I mean just more like if you bring this car back to me with one fucking scratch on it, I'm going to kill you.
there's a video of Max like watching him go around in this car, and I'm like, I can only imagine what's going through this man's head right now, like praying to God this kid does not crash his car, even though he's already won the drivers championship, but still. And then within the same free practice, I think Logan Sargent got at least some F1 points, because I didn't realize like if you drive even in free practice you get F1 points towards your super license.
I didn't realize that.
He was because I think that officially put him over the edge. He was officially confirmed on can race for Williams next year.
An American. Guys,
know.
I'm excited.
Woo.
I'm going to be completely honest. I know, like, nothing about this guy. And I feel like because he's the only American driver on the grid, he's got to be, like, the one thing the grid gals can agree on. I feel like he should be our, like, podcast favorite.
That's fine because I'm ready to ditch Checo as the podcast favorite.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I don't know. Okay, it's funny because you guys are like, oh, I'm excited for the new drivers in the grid. Everyone on Twitter hates next year's grid. I don't know if I'm
Really?
just like queued into the wrong like Twitter threads.
I
but,
love
like,
that you're our, like, honorary Twitter funnel.
I see everything. Like I can kind of read everyone's perspective on Twitter, but everyone's been posting, and like I don't remember the last time the grid sucked this hard. And I was
my
like,
God.
okay,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's the best grid I've ever seen. But I think there's a lot of new talent, so maybe it's just the apprehension to not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's more new drivers on the grid than there has been in the past couple of years. But yeah, I was kind of taken aback by that take because I didn't think, okay, I get it. Some fan favorites have left the grid.
Sure.
Completely understand.
Yeah.
You know, 2 fan favorites at this table for sure. But I didn't think it was that drastic. But apparently the Twitter sphere is not happy.
Well, I feel like Piastri has gotten a lot of hate. And, like,
Yeah.
honestly,
Rightfully
I'm on
so,
that
a little
train.
bit, yeah.
Like, we kind of beat that dead horse, but he seems like a brat.
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad for Lando. Because then he's just going to, I don't know.
I don't really feel bad for Lando. I feel like, if anything, he'll just...
I think it puts him in a good spot.
Yeah. He'll look
Like, he's-
either great compared to him, or
Yeah.
he'll whip that kid into shape.
Yeah.
I guess that's true. I can't see him really whipping him into shape, but...
Well, he's now the mature, the older driver, theoretically their number 1 driver, right?
True.
Although, like, isn't Piastri older than Lando? I thought
No.
Piastri was like 27 or something.
Oh, no.
That's
That I'm thinking of De Vries.
Yeah, De Vries.
yeah.
Which I'm just excited for the sheer chaos of his name alone. Like, we even saw that
yeah.
when he was filling in, because De Vries on the radio sounds a lot like debris. Like, oh, there's debris on the track. De Vries is coming on the track.
Yep.
And everyone's like, what? Debris? What turn? Like, where do I need to watch out? That's what I'm excited for. I love that De Vries is on here. Know nothing about the kid. Love his name.
Guys, I think it might be worth, like, going into all the new drivers, at least, like, their background. Maybe do, like, pre-season recap.
Yeah. I feel like we need to do a solid season recap as well as, like, a 23 preview.
Yes, 23 preview. I think that would be a good one. Because, like, I don't think we're going to see a lot of car changes. And, like, I think the big things are going to be the new drivers and the new team principals.
Yes. Speaking
Confirmed.
of, okay, if there's one thing that is great about being a Ferrari fan, and there aren't that many things that are great about being a Ferrari fan, we've discussed, right? There's a lot of history. Legendary team, classic merch, just kind of, you know, the glitz and glam, right? Like, you think F1, you think Ferrari. And then there's the reality of it, which is just like a clusterfuck every race weekend, brought to you by none other than the Ferrari team principal himself, Benito, who is being shown the door officially. And I think there's some rumors about who's going to be replacing him. I think the biggest rumor is Alfa Romeo's team principal.
Which would make sense, right? Sister team. Obviously, that would be a step up.
Well, like, let's be real. That is a huge role to fill. I feel like you're not going to pick somebody random. Like, you want somebody who's very familiar with the grid and the mechanics of being a team principal. I'm honestly shocked it took them this long.
Yeah.
Not to bring this back to Twitter. The fan favorite rumor is Seb, team principal 2023.
I have seen that too. That was cute.
I've seen it. I think it's darling. I think it's absolutely insane. But
Totally a rumor for sure, but people are going nuts for that to be a reality.
Well, speaking of Seb, I feel like there was a lot happening with Seb this weekend. Obviously with his retirement, but then, like, a lot of rumors, like, a lot of the drivers don't think that this is it for him, that he's going to pull an Alonso.
Well, and
come
Alonso
back.
even said that.
Yeah.
Because they did this side-by-side of Seb saying goodbye to Alonso when he retired the first time, and, you know, Seb was on Ferrari. And then Alonso basically, like, mimicked Seb's goodbye, where Seb was joking, like, oh, I think you'll be back. And Alonso's like, I think you'll also be back. And I would love that. He's even hinted at it. I feel like he's almost regretting his decision a little. Or not necessarily. I don't know if regret's the right word. But, I mean, he needed to get out of Aston Martin. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you've listened to any of the Beyond the Grids, but Vettel was most recently on there. Actually, now I think there's a new Ricardo one as well. But he sounded like he's pretty at peace and like wants to kind of explore different things in his life. But it doesn't sound like he's done with F1 forever. But kind of just wants. He's like, I want to see who I am as a person outside of F1, because obviously F1's all absorbing in people's personalities. So,
well, I think that makes sense, right? Like, you're 35. You've been in the sport for what, 12, 13 years? I mean, that's like almost your entire adult life.
Yeah, and I mean, karting since you're like, what, 4? So like your entire life has been leading up to this moment. And then it's like, okay, what am I now?
Yeah, did the thing, did it multiple times.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, everybody has their quarter life crisis. Like, I get that. He needs to go eat, pray, love. You know, he'll be fine.
Well, speaking of eating... Did you see the team dinner they did? Or not team, the driver dinner they did.
Yes.
Stop. And every single driver posted the same photo, and it's so heartwarming.
And if you notice, the only drivers who, like, aren't smiling are the Ferrari drivers.
Yeah, I saw a lot of, like, people break down the photo of, like, who was smiling, how far apart the driver teammates were standing from each other in the photo, like that type of thing. It's just like, people have really overanalyzed this.
Did you see the one where everybody was zooming in on the fact that Lewis had his arm around Checo?
Yeah.
And they were basically like, oh my God, Checo's colluding with Hamilton to screw over Verstappen. I thought you'd appreciate those. Absolute insanity. I love
that
the
photo
internet.
Broke the internet.
I loved that because I think it was Hamilton's idea to throw Vettel a goodbye dinner. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because they were I think throughout all of the interviews for the pre-race for Abu Dhabi, all the reporters were asking all the drivers about the dinner and who started it and all that stuff. And they asked Max, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think like Hamilton threw it together or whatever." And he was like, "Yeah," and he paid for it too, which is pretty nice because he basically was like alluding to he has a ton of money. Yep. It's like, you all have a ton of money. Like,
I heard the bill was $160,000.
Oh my God.
And mind you guys that there's probably no alcohol included that because of the drive in the weekend.
Yeah, because wasn't it at the beginning of the weekend?
Yeah, so that's like food?
Oh, okay. No, I think there probably was alcohol included. Because think about it, you order just even a couple bottles of nice champagne for a toast or two.
Yeah, maybe like a couple bottles of champagne.
You could
like,
knock it out. Also, it's Abu Dhabi. Everything's also probably just insanely priced.
Yeah, I wonder. Still.
So I think this means we need to go to Abu Dhabi and see what the dinner prices are like. Just do some research.
Well, we need to find a Hamilton to pick up our tab first.
Anybody, if you're willing to spot the gals at Abu Dhabi trip, let us know.
Call us up.
What other sentimental goodbyes? There were really cute ones on the driver's screens when they were doing like their last lap. I know Daniel had a really cute one. Seb had a really cute one. I obviously was not paying attention to Mick or Latifi, but those two were really cute.
Yeah.
Well, not to jump to like the end of the race, obviously, but there was the post-race kind of like celebrations, and you know, Seb did get driver of the day, which
was fitting. That's
I
love
mean,
that.
how can you not, right? But then with the donuts after, I think, Catherine, it was you who was telling me that, you know, Seb's doing these like celebratory donuts, and Mick goes out to join him, and they're like, yeah, you need to stop.
Yeah, they're like, sorry, bud, you gotta ask you to stop. Because I don't know why it's like, one, why is Mick Schumacher doing donuts, but also like, the Haas car can't really afford to be doing these reckless maneuvers, you know what I mean? Like, maybe the Aston Martin probably can. I heard they have some room in their budget.
Well, end of the season, you know?
Yeah.
Blow it all now.
I think that was all I had in terms of like the weekend. Time to get into the race?
Yeah, I think so.
Start with quali? Not gonna lie, guys, again, a lot less exciting than last year's Abu Dhabi. Had a front row Red Bull lockout, had a second row Ferrari lockout, had a third row Mercedes lockout. Also, question, is it a lockout if it's not the front row? I realized that as I was saying it.
I think we can call it whatever the hell we want at this point.
We'll figure it out for next year. I think it was exciting because Mercedes was doing so well this race. So even seeing them qualifying, what was it?
Fifth and sixth
was good. I mean, the McLarens, I don't even know where they ended up in qualifying, to be honest. But with the first 3 teams locking out the first couple rows, it's a pretty solid startup.
I think Lando qualified 7th again because he's been making this joke since he's finished so many races in 7th place that he should change his number from 4 to 7, which I thought that gave me a little chuckle.
Aw.
Poor guy. He's just really had some tough luck with the McLaren this year.
Yeah, it just sounds like it's been a difficult car. I mean, he has kind of like pulled it through as much as he possibly could, I feel like, but...
Yeah, and I think that's speaking a lot to his skill. I think he's made it look a lot better than it actually is.
Yeah,
I believe that. Well, no, Danny took a penalty based on Brazil. Mm-hmm. So I think he ended up in like 13th or something, maybe.
But he qualified originally pretty well, right?
Yeah, he actually had a pretty good qualifying, but yeah, the penalty dropped him back. So I was just hoping for his final race, not knowing if, obviously at that point we weren't officially sure if he would have a spot next year, even in a reserve capacity. Just hoping that he would get some points.
I know.
And he did, which was good, but...
I was upset to hear about the penalty because I think we left for Brazil being like, oh, I guess because they crashed, like nothing happened. They were supposed to talk about the results of that incident, of Daniel's incident with Magnussen in Brazil post-race, but I don't think we ever heard about it until we actually got to Abu Dhabi and they're like, oh, here it is.
Yeah, which is fitting for the FIA, right? They're just focusing on the biggest fire in the room, which was some of the other, refer to our last episode for all the fireworks of the last race. But yeah, we didn't hear anything of it, and so it was sad to go into the last race with that tacked onto him after he did do so well, like going into the start of the weekend.
Nothing else really stands out to me on qualifying. Do we want to start with race results and then maybe dive into some of the highlights?
Yeah. All right, so race results for our final race of the year.
Aww.
I know, kind of sad. We did have 3 DNFs and heartbreaker for our first one, following a pattern we've unfortunately seen too many times this season, Fernando Alonso. Our second DNF, much less heartbreaking, but what a way to go out and end his F1 career, Nicholas Latifi, DNF.
He had to. It wouldn't be Abu Dhabi without it.
Agreed.
It feels right, And then for our third DNF, kind of surprisingly, we had Lewis Hamilton. And Jack, I think you were the one who said that this was actually Mercedes' first DNF of the season?
Which was a shocking stat, but yeah, and what a heartbreaker to see how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, Catherine's over there crying, clearly. In 17th, we have Kevin Magnussen. In 16th, we have Mick Schumacher. 15th, Valtteri Bottas. In 14th, we have Pierre Gasly. In 13th, Alex Albon. In 12th, Zhou Guanyu. In 11th, Yuki Tsunoda. And into our points positions, scoring 1 point in his final race of his F1 career, Sebastian Vettel. In 9th, also getting a point in his last F1 race for now, Daniel Ricciardo. In 8th, we have Lance Stroll. In 7th, Esteban Ocon. In 6th, we have Lando Norris. In 5th, George Russell. 4th, we have Carlos Sainz. In 3rd, we have Sergio Checo Perez. And in 2nd, clinching the 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship, Charles Leclerc. And in 1st, just astronomically securing his lead. And hey, adding to his record of most wins in a season, we have Max Verstappen. So not a ton of surprises there, really.
I was rooting for Leclerc, but you know what I learned? He got a massive payday for getting 2nd in the Drivers' Championship. So you know what? Good for Leclerc.
Well, I love that for him. He deserves it because he's had one hell of a season.
Yeah, and he didn't cheat to win, so I feel like he deserves it more than others.
Sheesh.
But I think, and Catherine, when we were discussing this earlier, you made a good point about how this was really a race that came down to strategy. And I think if you look at the results, you had Verstappen and Leclerc on a one-stop strategy, and you had Checo on a two-stopper, and that just wasn't going to cut it here.
Yeah, and I feel like there was no way to really tell at the beginning what was going to be more successful. I think everyone was going into it with the mindset that it was going to be a two-stop. just because I think Abu Dhabi has higher tire degradation than most other circuits. But yeah, it was amazing to see Max and Leclerc take those tires all the way through.
Yeah, especially considering how warm it is there, and like the track temperatures. I feel like it is naturally one of those circuits where, and it's pretty high speed. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, there are some turns, but especially on that straightaway, like I think it's one of the faster circuits.
Yeah, one stop seemed to be the strategy that won the day for sure. So one of the drivers that I want to comment on, well, I guess one stop was the winner for Max and Leclerc. It became very apparent that it was not the winner for the Mercedes drivers. I think specifically Lewis throughout the race was trying to hang on to his position. They went with a one-stop strategy. And I know towards the end of his race, he was calling on the radio asking if it was too late to pit. And they were like, you won't make the places back up. It is.
Right.
We're past the point of no return. Although I will say he did have an altercation with Sainz earlier on, and he ended up having to retire the car due to hydraulics issues, so that could have had something to do with it, but the one stop did not work out for Hammy. Sad day.
Yeah, I would like to say that I feel pity about that, but I feel like Hamilton was complaining about like at least seven different things going wrong with that car. If it wasn't the tires, he said that the engine was failing, and then, I mean, it sounds like the hydraulics was an issue, but he complained about like a bunch of different items, and I was just like, I think maybe your driving just might not be great.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is his first season in F1 where he has not won a single race.
It is.
And where he didn't outperform his teammate.
Oh.
Because
I hadn't heard that stuff.
Russell, I believe, we might need to fact check me on this, but Russell was just so consistent this year. And I mean, he did win a race, but even outside of that, he was just so consistent with always being in the top 5. I believe he outperformed Hamilton this season.
He definitely did. I don't know if this is the only time that someone has outperformed Hamilton as a teammate.
I think since he started winning, or at least maybe at Mercedes.
Yeah, because I mean, with like...
well, no, because Nico Rosberg,
yeah,
beat him for the World Championship one of those Mercedes years.
And I'd be shocked if he beat Alonso when he was a rookie McLaren.
I don't know. We'll have to double check, but either way, it's been a long time.
It's been a while.
It's also cool that that Russell did so well this year compared to a 7-time world champion.
Especially in his first year at Mercedes.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, as much hate as we give to Russell on this podcast, I would say very impressive season, at least from consistency, because that ends up what gets you into a position to win the Constructors is just getting consistent results from both drivers. Obviously, it does help to have a world champion on your team, but I would say probably a lot of Mercedes' success this season is due to just Russell's consistency.
Yeah, agreed.
Speaking of Russell, I do want to say there was, while I'm still sitting here as a McLaren fan, Russell did end up getting a penalty for pit stop. Although, to be fair, I don't think it was Russell's fault. It was whoever released him. Is that the lollipop guy?
It is the lollipop guy.
The lollipop guy did not do his job well, and they released him while Lando was coming into pit and caused Lando to lock up, which was not a great look in the pit lane.
So would you say that Mercedes lollipop man this weekend was a bit of a sucker?
Oh my god.
Oh wow. That was a dad joke if I've ever heard one.
Perhaps a dum-dum?
Okay.
All right, we gotta stop. We gotta stop. I think I know we talked about the other notable DNFs. Alonso really just left Alpine with a bang. I mean, there's been a lot of tension between him and Ocon. We talked about it in Brazil. I think they're at this point where we know he's moving on to Aston Martin. They're like, just let him do whatever he wants to do. We just want to finish the season, secure our position, not lose out to McLaren, obviously. So they just needed both cars to finish and finish better than the McLarens were doing. And it was really sad that Alonso did have to end up retiring the vehicle. And it was due to a water leak issue, which I guess is the 4th time this has happened this season.
He just can't catch a break.
No, can't.
In terms of DNFs purely for car mechanical issues and like not as a result of an incident, right? Like not you hit somebody and then you're like, oh, I had a mechanical issue. Well, yeah, you hit someone. But just pure mechanical issues, I feel like Alonso has just been completely dogged all season. And, like, no wonder he can't wait to get away from Alpine.
And for how he's been performing in that kind of shit car.
Yeah.
It's disappointing to see him DNF so often because he'll perform really, really well in qualifying or, like, start off the race really strong and then just have to completely stop. No points.
And talking in some of his interviews, he said he thinks and has estimated that he's lost 70 points this season due to DNFs and car failures, which might be a little bit on the side of the dramatic, but still, I mean...
But even talking about, you know, you mentioned Leclerc's bonus.
Yeah.
I'm sure he gets bonuses for how many points he scores for the team.
Oh, yeah.
And if you put that into a dollar amount, I'm sure it's pretty substantial for him.
Yeah, especially someone of his caliber who has the history that he has. I'm sure he has one very interesting contract, and, like, I have no idea how it was negotiated. But, yeah, if you, I'm sure, would keep a tally of every point you lost if it equated to money that would have been in your pocket.
Oh, yeah. And I think your point, too, on, you know, there's no love lost between Ocon and Alonso. I don't know if you've seen some of the quotes that have gone out since they're no longer teammates, but Ocon had some things to say about Alonso, too, which was pretty...
Ooh, do tell.
He said something to the extent of Ocon himself had to carry most of the team responsibilities.
Oh, wow.
Saying that he did, I want to say it was 98% of all the sim testing and, like, the marketing trips, all of that stuff, because Alonso just would not participate.
You know,
but I could see that.
I can, and I feel like Alonso's other teammates have complained about him being a bit of a diva, not being a team player, having an attitude. Like, I think even teammates other than just drivers, right? Like engineers, people in the garage, have said that he's difficult to work with.
I will also say the things that Ocon listed, though, kind of seem like maybe because Alonso is kind of like a more of an old school driver. Like, I could see him not wanting to do sim testing. Like, that probably wasn't around when he first started driving. Or same with, like, all the marketing shit that all of the drivers have to participate in. I could see him not participating in that as much. Because, like, he's not going to want to do TikToks.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Come on.
I can't see Alonso being a big TikToker.
No, like...
I mean, he's in his 40s.
Yeah, that's why you have, like, the beautiful Ferrari guys be doing TikToks.
Yes.
Okay, like... That makes sense.
Well, and, like, what does TikTok want to see? Let's be real. It's the Ferrari boys. We all want to see them.
I mean, let's not forget the AlphaTauri team. In terms of just, like, the content being driven, not saying the driver's attractiveness level. I'm just saying the creativity from the AlphaTauri media team needs to be appreciated.
AlphaTauri's social media team works with what they have and puts together cinematic masterpieces. There's like no other word for it. I will constantly send Jack stuff from AlphaTauri because I'm like, they're killing it.
Yeah,
they're
they really
killing
do.
the game. And I mean, like, not gonna lie, love Yuki, feel ambivalent about Pierre. Neither of those guys, like, are exactly oozing with charisma, right?
Right. So I feel like the Ferrari social media team, all they have to do is just, like, hold the camera up to one of the guys,
yeah,
and it's, like,
totally fine.
basically, like, it just...
Yeah.
Like, give me all these angles. My chiseled jawline will make everything look great. Like, come on.
It does itself.
Yeah.
You know?
But to take those two on AlphaTauri and make what they have made, incredible.
I mean, because even, like, Mercedes, I've seen unbelievably cringy TikToks, reels of Russell. Like, Hamilton's got it down. Let's be real.
Hamilton, he knows how to do
He knows
Well,
what he's doing.
Back to the point about charisma.
Yeah. But, like, the Mercedes marketing team is not helping Russell out at all.
No, it's bad. It's bad. We talked about Ferrari getting a new team principal. Mercedes needs a new head of creative content. Russell needs a better brand out there.
You know who has it really easy? McLaren.
Oh.
You have two boys who were made to be in front of the camera. Those are like two of the most charming guys on the grid.
Oh, yeah, and they have great followings, and, like, I mean, Lando on Twitch, he's just streaming all the time. Like, Danny Rick, I mean, that man, he just belongs in front of the camera.
Jack could not have a bigger smile on their face. I mean, back to the race, ladies. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Yes, I did want to say, So towards the end, right, Max is kind of has a comfortable lead, and it's really all eyes are on Leclerc versus Perez. Was on the two-stop strategy, so he's just trying to make up ground, and Leclerc was, defending, holding his position, being on a one-stop strategy. Max kind of piped out and told Perez, he called in and was like, tell Checo to send it, like, he's good, these tires are holding up. So, maybe he was being a little bit of a team player. Maybe he got a better attitude from the prior weekend. I don't know.
There was one thing that bothered me about this race, and that was the talk between Verstappen and Checo, because there was some people saying, like, Max should help Checo more. As in, like, what is he? At that point, he had, like, a 7-second lead on everybody. Mm-hmm. And so what they wanted him to do was to break down enough to hold up Leclerc so that Checo could go around both Leclerc and Verstappen.
How would that work?
So he could, exactly. But they were saying, well, that's what Checo did for Max in Abu Dhabi last year, right? Like, held up Hamilton,
slightly
helped him out.
Different scenario.
Yeah, but I'm like, he's already this far ahead. Max is already this far ahead. Like, he's not going to break in order to help
also,
that much.
I don't think you can do that. I think you can get penalties.
No, yeah, because that, like, honestly does not seem like that would be according to, like, any type of sporting guideline. Because that way you're actually manipulating the race results.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can talk about manipulating the race results. Like, did Checo help Max out in Abu Dhabi last year, or did the safety car, Well, back to 2022, ladies. Any other final thoughts for this race?
No, I think we about covered it.
Yeah, I feel like most of our drama and excitement was actually just around the circuit, not necessarily on it this time.
Yeah. I mean, overall, not the nail biter we had last year. Solid race. I think to your point, it was more about the weekend this time than the actual, 58 laps or what have you. But I'm kind of sad the season's over.
Me too. I mean, I don't know how people, at least F1 has a long season. Like, we have a couple months off. It's going to hurt, but, like, at least it comes back and there's preseason testing pretty soon or as early as February. I don't know the people who only have, like, a 4-month sports season. That just must suck to be a fan.
I feel like they just follow more than one sport.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's what makes F1 the best sport. It's simple, 10 teams, 20 drivers.
15,000 rules.
We're still learning them. And we'll be back for next year.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do a full season recap, some of our highs, lows, final thoughts, but...
Ladies, we gotta settle up on our bets.
Oh,
I don't even remember all the bets I have to settle up on. I know it's a lot.
Me either. It's so weird.
Yeah, we'll definitely revisit those, but
it'd be fun to look at all of our predictions and see how they panned out now.
That's a good call. Yeah, we got to see who won our little predictions.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't looking good midway through the season. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I made some insane calls, so we'll see.
Yeah, Lando, number 1.
Just chop the top off of 7. It looks close enough.
So true. So true.
Well, if you like what you heard so far, you can check out our website. It has links to all of our socials, as well as all of our episodes and links to anywhere you listen to podcasts.
And that's the checkered flag for this season. We'll see you back on the grid for our season recap.